like I tell my wife about parenting, I think it's very similar. You have to coach them hard. You got to love them hard. And you have to know how to do that. Not everybody knows how to do that. Some guys just know how
Yeah.
to love them, and some guys know just how to hammer them when the
Yeah.
kid gets completely turned off. I think you have to show them that you're human, and that you've had problems in your life, and you have challenges in your life, but that you are. Listen, if you see it, you just got to tell them, I can't. I got to do my job, and I've got to do you a service. I can't let you not maximize your potential.
So you've been coaching for 45 years.
Yeah, well, I've been involved in football in one way, shape, or form for 45 years. Now, from 2004 to 2006, a fellow that I coached at Central Connecticut. I had a hell of a D line at Central Connecticut. I've coached on both sides of the ball, named Scott Pioli.
Oh, yeah.
When Coach Reid left to go to Syracuse, and I was happy he did, things had changed a little at Richmond. I was actually going to go as a restricted earnings, or nowadays they'd call them analyst, to Syracuse University. Coach Pasqualoni offered me a job. I was going to coach the outside linebackers, and he was going to get my wife, Kathy, a job at a bank up in Syracuse, New York. And I had some people that I coached with, Coach Adagio, Coach Rippon.
Mm-hmm.
And then the Patriots called me. I went to Philadelphia, and this had to be in the spring of 2004. Coach Reid went to Syracuse to coach the D-line, which I was happy about. I think at the end there, he wasn't treated the way he should have been treated, but that's my opinion. So anyway, Scott Pioli called me. I went to see Spags when Spags was with the Philadelphia Eagles, visited. Scott Pioli called me and he said, Coach, you're going to come up here for a couple of days. I said, well, no, Scott, I'm just coming up for a day. He said, Coach, I think you ought to come up here for more than a day. So I said, and then he called me the next day, and he said, Coach, the reason why we want you to come up here for more than a day is we would like to hire you. Hire me at the New England Patriots? I go, what do you mean? He goes, Coach, we're creating a job for you, and what you're going to do is you're going to sit in on Coach Scarnecchia's meetings. You're going to learn about what we look for in offensive linemen, and then you're going to travel the country and evaluate all the top college offensive linemen in the country. And so from 4 to 6, 2004, 2005, 2006. Now, I never had a contract. I shook Scott Pioli's hand. I shook Coach Belichick's hand, and they said, you have to give us 2 years. I said, okay. And so really that's what I did. And I had a good knack for it because of the uniqueness of my job. I met some very powerful, heavyweight, influential people in pro football, because it was word got out that there was this guy that had coached the offensive line that was just strictly looking at linemen for the New England Patriots. And it was a great, great experience. I knew I was going to go back to football, college football. And so of those 45 years, Mark, 3 of those years were really in scouting, in personnel. And it was an amazing, amazing experience, which really triggered some other opportunities that I had from 2007 to the present day. But 45 years in some way, shape, or form in football. So it's
Crazy.
It was a good
By the
run.
way, to go back, I know you know well, but I don't know if the listeners can appreciate or understand who Dante Scarnecchia
Oh,
is. I mean,
yeah. 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 It's funny. So I was, I'm not a shy guy, but in that environment, I was, I was buttoned up, and I
Yeah.
had a chance. I was one of the few
Bella.
scouts that was able to sit in the springtime and in preseason before I went on the road. in the middle of August. I was able to sit in the team meetings. I was able to sit in unit meetings, and I certainly sat in Coach Scarnecchia's meetings, both in the spring and in early of preseason before I went on the road. So that was a tremendous, tremendous experience. And I'm not a guy that keeps a lot of things. For
Yeah.
45 years, I have a box,
Yeah.
like, a small box. I discard things. I mean, it's the
Me
past.
too. Me too. Me too.
I don't keep things. And so, but I did keep all my notes from New England. I have some things from Richmond and some things from Boston College. But I was just over Coach Scarnecchia's home in Rentham, Massachusetts a week ago tomorrow. And I spent 3 hours at his kitchen table just going over offensive line play. And it was awesome. Yeah,
Wow.
it was awesome. So I
Wow.
was very fortunate in a small, small way to be around Coach Scarnecchia, to be around Matt Patricia. What people don't realize is Matt Patricia was Coach Scarnecchia's basically his assistant offensive line coach. And Matt Patricia was wonderful to me. He would copy off the installs, and so I was very, very fortunate. Yeah, yeah, very fortunate.
Matt Patricia is I heard a very good guy. I don't know him personally, but I also know he's a very intelligent guy.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. He's I want to say RIT. He's an RIT graduate,
Yeah.
Rochester Institute of Tech. And he was super to me. Like
Yeah.
he would make me the installs and I just studied. And when I wasn't up there, because I still lived in Richmond, Virginia,
Wow.
I would fly up to New England when it wasn't scouting season per se, and I would just sit in a room and I would just study tape, and I think they thought that was that was I put a lot of time into it, and so consequently they were very, very good to me, and actually
Yeah.
wanted me to become an advanced scout, but they were so good to me, and they wanted me to stay with the organization that, or at least give me an opportunity. I never saw myself as a pro football coach. I just wanted to get back to coaching college football. But I did stay a third year before I went on.
Oh wow. Wow.
Yeah.
That's a huge. Hey, you better calm down. That's our puppy. You better calm down. So, Coach, number one, a huge honor to like be in that room. Did Dante like even in like O line meetings? Does he ever like not? I'm not talking about defer. I'm not saying that, but did he ever go, "Hey, what do you think of this, Frank?" Like in the meeting?
I would.
Because I know that it doesn't really work
You
that
know
way,
what?
but
Coach Garnett,
I know, I
in,
know.
in, in my presence to him, is a man of few words, but he was very good to me. He's a very direct guy.
Yeah, oh
He's
yeah,
like he's like guys I've grown up with in the profession. But every once in a while, he might give me a drill. He might every once in a great while. What you think of this or what you think of that?
yeah, yeah,
Again, he was just very, very good to me, and I certainly appreciate it. And it's not
yeah,
like we were buddy buddies, but I wasn't intimidated, because I don't know if I've ever been intimidated, but I was extremely respectful around
yeah.
Coach
Of course,
Kornecki,
of
the
course.
coaches, certainly Coach Belichick, and the administration. I worked with some great guys that went on to Tom Dimitrov, GM, Bob Quinn, GM, a bunch of guys, three, four guys.
Yeah.
Adam Peters is the president, I think, of the Washington Commanders. So I
Wow.
worked with some talented guys
Yeah.
that were in the scouting department.
Yeah, it's a really special circle. I mean, the amount of football experience and knowledge is like off the charts. Like people,
Oh yeah.
I don't think people, just you were talking about time and film and going over O-line play for 3 hours, which is nothing. People have no idea how much of football is academic.
Oh God, yeah. Oh
It's
my God.
like
Well, that's yeah.
crazy.
John Robinson was another guy, longtime GM of the Tennessee Titans. Just some talented guy. But in regards with what you just said, very interesting what you just said. It is very, very academic. And early in my career, even at Western Connecticut, I worked with some guys that were very, very sharp. Steve Adagio, my college teammate, Chris Rippon, certainly Coach Pasqualoni. And I didn't know if I would keep the pace with them in that respect. teaching a guy how to do something physically, I was comfortable. Still am to
Yeah.
this day. I could be in front of Vince Lombardi. I'd be like, Coach Lombardi, I'm good. I'll teach this guy how to do
Yeah.
this. Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
But when it came to the academic end of football, it's always taken me a little longer. And I'm not ashamed to say that. I tell young coaches. So it was interesting. I was at my alma mater. I went from Western Connecticut to Central Connecticut, where I was coaching the D line, just like I was at Western Connecticut. I loved coaching the D line. And we got let go after my second year. So it was probably in the winter of 1987. I was reading a book by John Madden, One Knee Equals 2 Feet. And in this book, although they had humor to them, they also had some interesting anecdotes. And he talked about when he was hiring his staff at the Raiders, he had to have all different kinds of coaches. Not every coach was an X's and O's guy. Not every coach was a motivator. Not every coach was a technician. And when I read that book, I'm like, okay, not every coach is, John McVay or whatever this kid's name is out there. Yeah. So maybe I got a shot. So that gave me a little hope to try to hone my skills at developing guys. And I think, Mark, that's how I lasted as long as I lasted. Being a good, trying to be a good person and working at it. And I had the fortune of some, developing guys. I had some good guys over the years, from the Piolis, the Kings, the Tom Sweeney's at BC, and so I had some guys that had some success. So
you had a lot of guys, and I know that has a lot to do with you, the way you coach, the way you taught them, the way you pushed them, the way you also patient with them at times.
Yeah.
And I want to go back to the Eric King thing, but because I have so much respect for Eric, and I know there was a lot of fun playing against him. And
my God, you guys! I was just telling my daughter the battles that you and Eric King, you guys were violent. Well, you were violent. Eric was tough, and I'll never forget I don't know if it was a team time when we were going crossfield. You guys got in a brawl, and we had some great teams at Richmond. But yeah, Eric King was, oh my God, what a player.
I remember telling people it's very testy, and they go, "What do you mean?" I go, "Well, you don't want to get in someone's way during a practice. You don't want to walk by them. Like
it was hot. It was sticky. You had between Jim Reid, Joe Cullen, Jeff Hansen, myself. There were some guys that their DNA was go, 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 man. Go, 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 man. You know what I mean?
Like when you talk about an overload of testosterone.
Oh, yeah. There was some.
It was wild. I remember Matt Davis. Matt Davis was like a brother to me. I walked through the huddle, and he said, "Don't ever walk through the huddle again." And I said, "We'll see." I said, "We'll see." I said, "I'm going to remember that." I said, "I'll remember that." And I didn't even mean
Matt Davis story ever. And the guy's like the offensive coordinator of the Kansas City Chiefs. And I met him at Penn State about 3 years ago. We're playing Delaware at our place, 98, your senior year.
Oh, yeah, I know this story.
And the kid's name was Cecere or something like that.
Mike Cecere.
And Joe Cullen and I are screaming and yelling like we always do. And we're in stretch. And the kid from Delaware says, "Hey, Coach, why don't you guys shut up?" Matt Davis is doing toe touches, raises his hand while he's doing a toe touch and goes, "I got him," and proceeded to beat the dog out of him. What did we win, like 44-6?
Yeah.
And when I met this guy,
45-6.
Yeah. When I met this guy 2-3 years ago, the coordinator of the Chiefs, nice guy. I go, "You're the kid."
Mike Cecere is the coordinator of the Chiefs?
No, it's the
Delaware coach.
Nagy. Yeah, it's Nagy.
Nagy. Yeah, Nagy.
He's the coordinator, and I'm like, "You're the kid that was the quarterback at Delaware?" He goes, "Yeah." It was a very nice guy, very polite. Yeah. And I told him the story. He goes, "Yeah, that guy was, I think he said he was my best man in my wedding." The point is, we had some tough dudes, and Matt Davis didn't even blink, raised his hand. I got him. And that was a great story.
It was super aggressive, man.
Yeah, it was.
Matt Davis is one of my favorites, man.
Oh, yeah, he's a tough kid now.
He's an unbelievable person as well.
Yeah.
But, the other thing is, like, I don't think people understand how, like, violent those practices were violent.
Oh, yeah.
Those very aggressive. Yeah. Like, a lot of guys were getting hurt, not because it was careless, because it was violent.
Yeah, and when we in preseason, when we go to the intramural fields and it was hot and muggy and guys were cramping and it was just like, I mean, I wouldn't say fist fights. It might have been between the players, but I remember John Zimmerlin had to break up Coach Cohen. Oh, it was so much fun. I just ran into somebody about maybe 6 months ago, and they were like, "We hated you guys in pregame warm up. You and Coach Cullen and your players. We hated you guys." Yeah, I can understand.
I was like, those people
Get
would ask
it?
me,
I get it.
people would ask me, they go, were those coaches always like that?
Yeah.
And I'm like, you have no idea, man.
Well,
No.
yeah. Let me tell you something. The head coach, he played fullback for New Hampshire when you were, I think. He's the head coach of Holy Cross right now. And he was at one of our practices at Boston College. And he played at New Hampshire. And he's like, is that the guy that was the O-line coach at Richmond? And Ryan Day said, and they were teammates. And he said, is he like that as a coach? Because every day, and Ryan Day's like, oh yeah, he's like that every single day. So
Crazy.
that's
It's
all I know.
crazy.
That's what,
The passion. But let's go back, coach. Like Richmond,
oh,
when you start at Richmond,
yeah.
how does that happen? And then I'm aware, like people have to understand the details. Like you were like a restricted coach
Yeah,
Leonard should
restricted
have been a
earnings.
high level position, assistants, call it whatever you want, coordinator. But he started off in a very humble manner, the restricted earnings for years. And I know where you lived because I
Yeah,
spent some time living there.
so I was at the University of Connecticut, and Coach Jackson was let go, and so after the '93 season, I was out of work, and a guy that I became very close with, Steve Spagnuolo, who worked for Coach Reid at UMass when Coach Reid was the head coach of UMass. Spags, my whole career has been very good to me. Well, anyway, there was an offensive line job open, a restricted earnings job open at Richmond. So Spags, who also knew Jim Marshall, your first year head coach at Richmond, right? Coach Marshall, both of us were under Coach Marshall. So Spags called Coach Marshall, said, I think you ought to interview this guy. Well, Coach Reid was the defensive coordinator of Richmond at that time, 1992 and 93. He was coming up because his family still lived in Massachusetts. He and Coach Cullen were coaching at Richmond. I hope I'm not bouncing around. Coach Reid actually interviewed me at Bradley International Airport and called Coach Marshall and said, I interviewed him, hire him. So I went, first time I ever left the state of Connecticut, Mark.
Wow.
I was
Wow.
maybe, oh God, Mark, it was 2000, it was 1994. So I was, whatever, I was like 32 years old. So I went down, got my car, drove to Richmond, Virginia to be the restricted earnings offensive line coach, live in the basement of the Robbins Center, which is basically Richmond's basketball arena and gym and weight room. And I went down there and I lived in the basement and I became friendly with Coach Cullen, who was the D-line coach.
Yeah.
So this was 1994. And I worked with Coach Marshall because he was an offensive line guy. I really did an average job because I had been a wishbone offensive line coach, and not to insult anybody, at least wishbone offensive line play, at least in the late 80s, was not maybe what it is at Army and Navy and Air Force now. So I went to Richmond and we were, basically a pro I formation. And it's a little different. So I did an average job, but we struggled, if you remember. So Coach Marshall was let go, and then Coach Reid was hired. He left Richmond, went to Boston College, and then came back in '95. And I was in a back office, tucked away with Matt Griffin, and
Oh, I remember
and
that, Griffin.
yeah, and so Coach Reid came in, and he dealt with with the full time coaches basically, and he said to me, I'm going to keep you. I don't know whether I'm going to keep you as the offensive line coach or at another position. He goes, but I'm going to keep you. Well, I literally sat at my desk with my hands folded for about 48 hours. And then he came in and he kept me. So that was in the 95 and 96, he moved me to running backs. I still lived in the basement. And then we had a pretty good team, if you remember, in 95, 7-3-1, I think. 96, we dropped off a little, still in the basement, in the Robbins Center basement. And then in 97, about 2 weeks before spring practice, and it was because of Joe Cullen. We all know Joe Cullen is with the Chiefs, coached you, one of the finest D-line coaches in the NFL, just a great human being, very close. And I believe the story goes that he told Coach Reid in the spring of 97, Coach, Frank should be the O-line coach. And a couple people interviewed me, and Coach Reid brought me, he said, come on, jump in the car. We went up to the house, and he kept me as he moved me from running backs in 97, the spring night, 2 weeks before spring practice, to O-line. Well, I just hammered away at it, and we made some improvement. And I think Eric King and Joe Douglas and some of the other guys went into Coach Reid and said, Coach, we'd like him, to be the O-line coach. And so Coach Reid elevated me to full time. And that's when I went on a run to coach the O-line. And I just coached them hard, loved them hard. But I was restricted earnings between my 4 years at UConn and 3 of my first 10 years at Richmond, 7 straight years.
Tell them let's tell the listeners I know what it means. Tell them what that means. Tell them what it means.
A funny story on that, if you'd like me to tell. But anyway, What that means is, you are limited into how much you can make. You are limited. You in some instances, you could not go on the road recruiting. Now it's changed.
Yeah.
And you had some limitations. Sometimes you received health benefits. Sometimes you did not receive health benefits. At UConn, I did not. At Richmond, I did. And but I don't know. I might have made $10,000, And again, I lived in the basement, and so there were limitations. And here's the funny story. I'll try not to be long-winded. So there was an older gentleman who went to coach basketball somewhere in California, and they had told him, he was a retired guy, and they said, you're going to be restricted earnings because you could only work so much in the summer at your profession. You had to file that and send it, I think, to the NCAA. I hope I'm not convoluting or mixing the story up. And this older gentleman, this was years ago, again, in the late 90s, he was like, what are you talking about? And they said, well, you couldn't restricted earnings. And he was like, well, that's unconstitutional. You can't do that. And so he got a law firm from California.
Wow, I didn't know this.
Oh, yeah. And he sued, or he had a case against the NCAA. So the NCAA, Mark, had to go find all the, at the time called 1AA, FCS, because it wasn't in 1A football, FBS. Right. It was just in FCS. And they had to find all these football coaches that were in the category of restricted earnings. And they had to find basketball coaches. And we had to fill out all this paperwork, send it to this law office. Well, I never thought anything about it. In actuality, when I was at Richmond, the law firm called me and wanted me to testify in Kansas City about how it was detrimental to I was at my desk in Richmond. I was a full-time offensive line coach now. It had to be like 98 or something. And they started asking me questions like, wasn't this detrimental to your family or wasn't? I'm like, no, it wasn't. It was a way of me staying in football. If I have to do it again, I'll do it again.
That's right.
So they're like, never mind. You don't have to come to Kansas City. That's a true story.
Click.
So another year comes by and I get this piece of literature from the NCAA, and I call this law firm because we had to fill out all information, where we were, what we were doing, what years we were. So I was at my desk. It was when Richmond was having like a graduation. So they were always walking through the Robbins Center. It was in the spring or early summer of 98, maybe 99, 98. And so I call the law firm and I think I'm speaking to a secretary in California. And I said, my name is Frank Leonard. You probably don't know who I am, but there's some misinformation on the information that you need. And this woman was not a secretary. She was the lawyer. And she was like, oh no, Mr. Leonard, I know exactly who you are. You're going to get awarded one of the largest sums in the country. True story. Wow. So I'm like, yeah, okay. I hang up the phone. Mark, on my father's grave, I never think I'm like, there's no way they're going to pay me back pay. It was my choice. And all these guys who were restricted earnings were like, oh, we're going to get money. I'm like, we're not going to get money. No one's just going to give you money because you chose to be restricted earnings.
Of course.
Well, that's another year. I'm sitting, again, I'm at my desk. I get this envelope with a clear window. And I think it's NCAA legislation about O-line play. So I open it. 3 folds, Mark. I open the first fold. I open the second fold. It's a check for $78,000. I'm hyperventilating. I go into Coach Reid's office. I show him the check. And he, because Coach Reid has advised me on jobs, on finances.
Oh, yeah, of course.
I have the life I live now in great part because of Jim Reid. So he laughed like hell. I invested it, and that's my restricted earning. That's an absolute true story.
That is amazing.
That's
what a great story.
So,
and by the way, if anyone deserves it,
I was like, come on, man, they're not going to give me money for something I chose to do.
Karma. Yeah. You definitely deserve that one because you earned every penny of that one. And by the way,
but the beauty of Joe Cullen, so it was I was still restricted earnings, so it had to be like 96. He and Coach Zamberlin had a house. It was after those late night preseason practices. And this is why I love Joe Cullen like a brother. It's like 10 o'clock at night or whatever, 9 o'clock at night. We're tired. We watch the film. He goes, come on, you're not living in the basement anymore. I've been in the basement since like 94 because you're not living in the basement anymore. I go, what are you talking about? He goes, you're living with me and John. He goes, you don't have to pay. Don't worry about it. Yeah, you're not going to be in that basement. Remember that black Malibu he had? We go to like a mattress place and we get a bed and box spring, tie it onto his car. And I lived with Coach Cullen for the next couple of years. Yeah. I love Joe Cullen now. So not only did he tell Coach Reid he should be the offensive line coach, and Coach McElreavy, we just switched, was so supportive. He was unbelievable. I talk to Coach Mack to this day. So not only did Joe Cullen press Coach Reid, and Coach Reid was, he was great to me, but he took me in, when I was restricted earnings and still living in the basement of the Robbins Center. So I love him like a brother.
Yeah, man. Coach Cullen. Listen, Coach Cullen is incredible. You know how I feel about him.
Heart of gold.
And Coach Mack is a very special man. He's a very good person.
Yeah,
Mack's great coach. But I think the world of Coach Mack.
Mack was unbelievable. When we switched, Coach Mack went to running backs. I went to O-line, back to O-line. He was unbelievable, supportive. He was like, Frank, go ahead, man, get it. So anyway.
But that's, it's interesting what you just said. You just named all those people. That was like one coaching staff.
Oh.
And it's no surprise that when I say this, people get a bit confused, I think, because I've had people ask me about it after I say it. I say the coaches there, it's not that they didn't care about winning football games. They cared a lot about winning football games, but they cared 10 times to develop the young man.
Oh, yeah.
And the fact that they did that made us win more games. Yeah. And I know you know it because it's your life. And I've learned a lot of this stuff through you, Coach Reid, Coach Cullen, certainly Coach Hansen. The amount of relentless support from those coaches was something that I cannot describe or explain. And people say, "Oh yeah, I get it." I'm like, "No, you don't, man. You don't."
Well, Mark, people forget, and I tell the young coaches now that I work at Nichols, which I enjoy, young coaches, young players. Do you remember weekend study hall? We all had to rotate
Oh,
Friday night,
coach.
all day Saturday, all day Sunday. And as a coach, if you had all day Saturday, all day Sunday, and a coach, if you had that week, you were in Sunday night, and then you had the week. And what I always tell people was Jim Reid, he knew everybody's grades.
Yeah.
And we would sit in staff meetings, and you weren't being dishonest, but like, as you know, the 2 years, 95 and 96, when I coached the running backs, I had the infamous Elio Imbernone.
I knew
And he'd
you
be
were
like,
going there.
okay,
I knew
what
you were
does
going
Elio have in English 101? Coach, I think he got a C minus. Shit, he got a D plus. He knew everybody's grades. We had a class check. We had a study hall. And then at the end, do you remember? Oh, you remember, because I remember going to your room. We had to check their rooms for cleanliness.
Oh my God.
Oh, yeah, we were
Listen,
involved in their lives 24/7.
Yeah, people when I talk about coaching at other schools, like later on when I went to those all-star games, I was like, you guys had it easy.
Oh,
Like
God.
I'm like, I would ask about, did you have this? They're like, no. And I'm like, no. Listen, bed. By the way, we haven't even mentioned breakfast check.
Breakfast check.
Yeah, right. By the way, for anyone listening, right? Brett, number one, they're checking on your grades. No one misses class.
No.
Like, what do you mean? You sleep in? No one misses class. And by the way, this is in large part, for me, this was a continuation of my mother. Like, everyone missed school from time to time, growing up, middle school, high school. My mother's thing was, she played this mind game with me. She said, if you don't feel good, I'm going to bring you to school, or depending where I was, sometimes walk, but call me, I'll pick you up. And by the time I get to school, the day was over. She's like, it's another 2 hours, just stick it out.
Yeah.
So she was like, show up, always show up, right?
Well,
So
that
then,
was your DNA.
yeah, under Coach Reid, we what do you mean? No one misses class. In the class check, I said, you got to go in class. And DJ says, why? I say, because Coach Reid's sitting in class.
Oh, yeah.
He's sitting inside the class right now.
Oh, yeah.
You too. I remember you guys were waiting. Where's Elio? Where's Elio?
Oh.
And then we show up, and then breakfast check. You have to be up, like in eating. Like, no one misses a meal ever.
Oh, Elio, he was the old Private Fortenberry story.
You might as well tell the story.
Okay. So I have my 2 years that I'm coaching the running backs. Before I went back to the O-line, I have the running backs. I have Elio Imbernone, who's a great character, a great dude, but he is a character. So it was military science class. So I have to balance Elio's checkbook. I mean, this is how much.
By the way, it's exactly what Coach just said. What you just heard, yes, he had to balance.
I had Elio's checkbook, and I would have to administer checks. That was per Jim Reid. Well, anyway, I got to the point where I knew we had their syllabuses. Remember, we had their syllabuses, and so I said, Elio, what's the deal in military science? Well, private. He says to me, this is what Elio Imbernone says. He goes, I go, who's your teacher? It's Private Fortenberry. I said, okay, well, I'm going to call Private Fortenberry. So I call who I think is Private Fortenberry, because I want to check, is this really Elio's grades, or how is he doing? The professor picks up the phone. I say, excuse me, could I speak with Private Fortenberry? And there's a silence on the other end of the line. I'm like, hello? I said, this is Coach Leonard from over the football office regarding Elio Imbernone. Could I speak to Private Fortenberry? And he goes, that's Colonel Fortenberry. Oh man, I go, sir, I am so sorry. I am so sorry. And he knew right away it was Elio's deal. And I'm like, that and freaking Elio Imbernone. And when I've gone to a few weddings, these son of a B Richmond guys, they just laugh about it. Coach, remember when you called Colonel Horton?
Oh my God. I was just on with Pete Sousa, and Pete was like, everyone tells a story. Everyone
That's
tells
a
a
true
story.
story.
And people just don't understand. Elio and Bernoni, we couldn't be more different,
Oh, God, yeah.
more different. But I started to realize that this wasn't exactly a coincidence, right? Like, he provided me with so much
That's
good
right,
stuff,
Mark.
right? Really, like good,
Really a good dude.
yeah, like a lot of.
Football player.
Oh, he was a great football
Yeah,
player.
he really was. Big fullback.
Great football player.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
he was
really
a
was.
very good football player. He was a great athlete.
Yeah,
He
yeah,
just
yeah.
like his shtick was he didn't want to let on like he cared, but I know he cared a lot.
Yeah,
He
oh,
cared a lot.
there's
You
no
know?
doubt. Spot
Yeah.
on. Spot
But
on.
he's like Adam Sandler. Like Adam Sandler was told growing up, he's never going to make any money in life being a clown. And Elio is a clown and does very well for himself. And he doubled down on that with Barstool and everything. It's wild.
Yeah,
It's,
yeah.
it's really wild.
Yep.
But you know, all the guys that played under this coaching staff, I mean, dude, doctors, lawyers,
Oh, yeah.
people who are just crushing it in life, people working for
Yeah.
pharmaceutical companies,
Yeah.
medical devices, like it's unbelievable. And a lot of coaches, Joe Douglas, people in scouting, people in the NFL, Manir Moore, Dwan Jones, Sean
Oh,
Gustis.
yeah.
Like it's
Yourself.
unbelievable.
Yeah.
You know, it's
Eric,
unbelievable.
a couple of years. Yeah. We had some really, really good players, really, really good coaches. It was a great experience, and it was all spirit, and it was a great place to live, and it was all spearheaded by Jim Reid, and that's
Yeah.
just a fact.
Coach Reed's, I mean, he's
Great man. I
he's
tell
unbelievable.
people
He's
I'm
unbelievable.
able
Yeah.
to retire. I'm able to live a comfortable life in great part by Jim Reid. Not only mentor as a football coach, mentor my finances, and and that's just in great part. And I've had some other guys, Steve Adagio, Steve Spagnuolo, but Joe Cullen, some guys across the great part because of Jim Reid. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, Coach Reid, the one thing that sticks out with Coach Reid, he could always spot the good or the greatness in someone.
Yeah.
Like he knew it. Like he knew it. Like he could see it, and he could see, no, this guy's going to be a player.
Yeah.
And I was like, I mean, it's going to be hard to get it out of him, but we'll get it out of him. Don't you worry. Right.
Yeah.
And, man, he knew, like, listen, he's the only guy who offered me a scholarship.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know what to tell you. You know,
I
what
was
I mean?
thinking about that on my walk yesterday. Absolutely.
It's wild. Like, thank God
He's
he
the only
did.
guy to offer Joe Cullen a scholarship. Joe Cullen had a partial to BU.
That's right. That's right.
That was a partial scholarship to Boston University. Then Coach Reid off. So you're right. What you said was spot on. He has the innate ability to recognize the good, and if he likes you, he will be patient with you. Whether you're a player, whether you're a coach, he will guide you. And sometimes it can be tough now.
Ooh.
But yeah, and I love the family and just
Yeah, they're awesome people, incredible people. So, Coach, we talked about your come up and how I wanted to know, like, listen, you said 7 total years restricted earnings.
Yeah, it was, and yes, and to be quite honest, it was 4 years coaching the outside linebackers with some terrific coaches and terrific players at UConn, and then my first 3, 94, 95, 96 at Richmond, and then obviously, as we already stated, yeah. So it was 7 years, and it was some tough living, but people, Coach Tate, Jeff Hansen, Joe Cullen were very good to me. Yep.
Yeah,
and I have no regrets. As a matter of fact, when I look at young coaches now, I try to be a mentor. A mentor is kind of a strong. I try to help, but I marvel at some of these guys, particularly in FBS football, the money they're making. They call them analysts now, and they can coach, and they're great jobs. But just. I'm not sure. I could be wrong. I'm not sure how many of these guys have slept on floors, and I'm sure they have.
Well, that's kind of where I wanted to go, coach, because like I want to know, like, look, everyone I talk to in any field in life, they want to make it, they want to do well. And me too. Me
Yeah,
too. We all do. Like,
yeah, sure, no question.
but what's going through your head after year two, three, four,
That's
five?
a great.
I really want to know. Like,
Oh,
I
that's
know what I was telling myself after football ended. I'm like, I'm a loser. Like, I'm a loser.
no,
I
yeah.
was very hard on myself. What was going through your head?
No,
Those
that's a
late nights, those
great,
long.
great question. Well, that's a great question. UConn, those 4 years, pretty good. Again, I had the support of Steve Spagnuolo and Vernon Hargraves and some Rusty Dunn, some real good dudes, Greg Williams, the college Greg Williams, not the program. And then when I went to Richmond, after about the second year, again, 4 years at UConn, 3 years at Richmond. So the second year would have been 90, 95. Yeah, would have been 95. I was at my desk and I was getting a little older now. And, again, I just had support from my college teammate and guy I ended up working for 10 years, Steve Adagio, just hang in there. I was single at the time. I had gone through a divorce and I was single. So I didn't, I was always smart with my money. I had the support. I was walking yesterday. I thought some of these questions might come about. My dad was a very quiet Italian guy. My mom was a tough Greek lady, but my dad was always very supportive. It was never like, "Are you sure?" Or, "Hey, it's time to," it was
Yeah.
just, "Hey, man, hang in there." And so I knew being around Paul Pasqualoni was special. I knew being around Jim Reid was special. And so there were days I was like, okay, maybe I should be a high school coach, maybe a prep school coach, but I just,
How did you hold on, coach? I'm sorry, but how
well,
did
no,
you
no,
know?
no, I
Like,
want you
I
to,
know. I want you to like how did you know? Because like it took me like every year there was like another level of Coach Reid. I was like, man, wow.
I knew, I'll tell you a
Like, how
great
did you
story.
know? Like, you're like, all right, I need to stay here because of this person. Like, I would.
Well, with Coach Reid, I'll tell you a great story, true story. We're playing University of Massachusetts. It's probably 1990, 91. Coach Reid's the head coach of University of Massachusetts. I'm coaching the outside linebackers at UConn. I'm in the press box. Spags is on the field calling the defenses. We're playing at UMass on a rainy, muddy day. I see this little dude. He's the I mean, I don't know who he is. He's this
Yeah.
little guy with curly black hair, a sweatshirt. He's muddy. He's high-fiving the UMass kids coming off the field. He's hugging them. This is a true story. I'm sitting in the press box. I hit Jimmy Collis, our offensive coordinator. I go, "Jimmy, who's the little dude down there?" He looks at me and he laughs. He said, "That's the head coach. That's Jim Reid." I go, "That's the head coach with just a ratty old sweatshirt, muddy, high-fiving." I went home that night, back to Connecticut, and we lost that game. I told my mother and father, "I'm going to work for that guy someday." True story. I said, "I'm going to work for that
Wow.
guy." Yeah,
Wow.
that was 1991. And then in 1990, 1995, I got a chance to work for him. So I just something about, he had that toughness, that aura, that love for football, with true passion. So, you know, between Steve Adagio, Steve Spagnuolo, Joe Cullen, I just kept forging ahead. And there were times I almost went, but I had no ties. I had a supportive family. I had a supportive guys surrounding me, and I was probably, Mark, stubborn. I was never real smart. Like I told you earlier in this conversation, football, the schematics of it never came easy to me, but I was pretty stubborn. I tell my daughters all the time, don't let anybody tell you what you can and cannot do.
Oh, I
Do
love
not.
that. It
Do not.
sounds simple and corny, but
Yeah,
I'm going to
cool.
tell
No,
you
no.
something. That's life.
Like
That's
my
life.
daughters, every once in a while, like these kids nowadays, Mark, as you may or may not know, and you'll learn with your son, they think they all have to be millionaires by the time they're 23 years old. And my daughters say to me, they say, well, Dad, look, you did good. And I look at them, I go, you're shitting me, right? You're kidding me. You know what the first 20, 25 years of my career looked like? It was,
Oh,
stubborn's the right word. It was just, hey, man, I'm going to do it.
but
Yeah, I'm
you
going to
have
do it.
like this doggedness
Yeah,
in
yeah,
you that
yeah.
listen,
That's how I
it
survived.
it's very rare now. You know that.
Yeah.
Like sometimes I'm like, dude, do you like, oh, well, I don't have a car like that. I'm like, dude, I'm 50. Come on. I'm 48. I'm gonna be 49 soon. Like, dude, please. Like, it's like I'm
Yeah.
not saying you shouldn't have it. You have whatever you want, you should
Yeah.
have. But understand the work that's involved. That's
There's
what I'm
no doubt.
saying.
There's no
You know?
doubt. So, but to the original, you asked me why. I guess it was just like, when I didn't do well in college and people are like, no, 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 I'm going to get back on the team. I'm going to
Yeah.
get back on the team,
Yeah.
and with coaching and I go, no, no, no. The whole pro football thing, that just kind of came. Um, I never aspired to be a pro football coach. Not that I never thought about is what I should say, but I enjoyed the hell out of being a pro football coach, and for reasons that might not. They're a little different, But anyway, I just hung in there, and then I started. I guess because I was always pretty good to people, and I worked fairly hard. I wasn't John Gruden, going to work at 4:30 in the morning. I mean, and
Yeah.
that's all great, but he was probably going home at 4:30 in the afternoon. You know what I mean? Um, um, but I just, I had a pretty good work ethic. I was around guys who had a great work ethic, and so some of the good fortune started to come my way with the people I was surrounded by, and some of the things I had done, some of the maybe guys I had developed. I had some pretty good D linemen at Central Connecticut. I had some pretty good guys at UConn, and once went back to the O line your era. I had Eric King, I had Joe Douglas, Steven Sorrell, some Eric Beatty, Bert Horsley. I had some good,
Yeah. Those are great guys,
Anthony
man.
Camp,
All great players.
Anthony
Great
Chimpolo. I had
players.
some good guys, So
Yeah. So
because Coach Cullen and Coach Reid did a great job recruiting kids from Massachusetts to come down, and we had some like Vinny Marino, the head coach of Nichols, who I help now. When he spent a couple years with us, he was like, there were some beautiful looking kids at Richmond.
yeah,
And
yeah, they
that
were.
was recruiting.
Honestly, I don't know if you told me this story or like Coach Cullen told me this story once, and you y'all were in a film room or something, and someone said Coach Reid said we need tough guys, like Mark's a tough guy, like we need more tough Irish guys like Mark, and it was you or Coach Cullen goes, Mark's not Irish.
No, Coach Cullen.
Coach Cullen goes, Megna's Italian, coach. He said it's
Oh
like
yeah,
you're
we
gonna
had
hear like
tough
a pin
guys.
drop. Coach Cullen goes, Coach Reid said, really?
Yeah, that was Joe. Oh, that was awesome.
So
Yeah. So
funny.
to answer your question, it was I don't know, not smart enough to give up. You know what I mean?
Well, you are no, I know you would never say it. Coach, people don't know Coach Lynn is a phenomenal coach, a legendary coach, coached everywhere, knows everyone, and coached best players and made them great players. And now let's talk about Eric King. Eric King, I've told him, but not at length. Like I was beyond impressed with Eric King
Yeah, good player.
because just hey, you're going to be a quarterback if you come to Richmond.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got a little bit of that as well. Hey, you're going to be a great linebacker for us, right? So, but he got it times 10.
Well, he was a wing T quarterback out of North Allegheny in Pittsburgh, northern suburb of Pittsburgh. And then he got to us and we moved him to tight end. Originally, he went from like 230, 225 to 260, or, maybe 245, 250. And in 96, we moved him to tight end and actually had some good blocks in the great game against James Madison, where the head coach said, "You guys are done." And we came back and we beat him at James Madison, a classic.
It was on ESPN. It was on
Yeah,
ESPN.
yeah. And Coach Reid shaved his head in the locker room.
Oh, wow.
Remember that?
Wow.
Said, if you guys win,
right.
I'll
I
shave
forgot
my
about
head.
that.
And Sean Barber made a tackle on the James Madison sideline, and the head coach looked down at him and said, "Son, give up. This game's over." And then we won. Yeah, we won.
That
And
was
then
incredible.
in 97, we moved Eric to offensive line. Now he starts weighing like 265, 270. And we move him to guard. And he's pretty freaking good, and he's smart because he was a quarterback. Like pro football offensive lineman, he knew when coverage was rotating. He knew when pressures and blitzes were coming. And he could take hard coaching. And he got bigger, faster, stronger. And he, like he had the respect of his teammates, and he turned out to be a fine player. And you were what? What round were you? Fourth or third?
I was sixth.
And he was what? Sixth? No, you were a higher draft pick than he was.
I was sixth. I think he may have been sixth as well, but
Okay,
after.
Yeah. And
But hold on, Coach. I'm sorry. He came into Richmond at like 220, maybe 215.
Yeah.
Then now he's up to, as a senior, he's
294.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's like 294, and at the combine he ran a 4.9 something now.
At over 300 pounds.
Yeah.
It was unbelievable.
Yeah,
It was unbelievable.
He did a great job. His attribute, he was tough, no doubt. He was tough, but he was athletic and he was smart, and he knew the game from a tactical standpoint, even as an offensive lineman.
Yeah,
that was his deal, and a great dude.
Yeah, he's a good dude, man. We had a lot of fun.
Oh God, yeah.
Elio got off on picking on him and making his life hell, but those guys are great. I mean, Eric, great teammate, great leader, and good person, awesome football player.
Well, it all starts up front, and our offensive line was really, really good, and our defensive line was really, really good. There were pro football players on our side of the ball, and then there was pro football players on your side of the ball.
Yeah.
I always tell people, and I mean this, I said this to Randy West, and I said this to this days, as you get older, people ask you. I just said this to my daughter. I've been around some great, great players, pro football players, players at places like Penn State. The best football player I've ever been around was Mark Megna. That's the best listen, that's the truth now. And I'm not, because I'm not on a Zoom with you. I've said that for years. I'll be sitting there at any place. Coach, when you get older, they start asking you those questions. Who's the kid we had at Richmond, a kid by the name of Mark Megna, was the best football player I've ever been around.
I appreciate that. No, I appreciate that. That means
fun.
a lot. Coming from you, that's a huge compliment.
Well,
and man, thank God for that scholarship offer.
Yeah. Thank God for getting elevated to full time. So we both.
Yeah, exactly.
Richmond did us well.
Seriously.
Yep. Richmond did us well.
I had this thing, Coach Leonard. Thank you for that. That means a whole hell of a lot coming from you.
Well, that's the truth.
Really.
Yeah, that's the truth. It's the truth.
Thank you, Coach. I had this thing when I had Coach Cullen on. You ever seen the movie Whiplash?
I don't think so. Maybe.
I talk about this a lot, and I need to hear your thoughts on this. So basically, the movie's about a kid who goes to one of the most prestigious music schools in the country, and he's a drummer. But the teacher is is you and Coach Cullen, like tough, like mind games. It's bad, right?
Yeah.
You got to watch the movie. You really do.
I will.
And the guy pushes the kid beyond, like crying, quitting, bleeding, suffering. The kid's in a car accident. He sprints to the audition. He's late. They make him sit second chair. Something happens where the teacher gets kicked out of the school. And then, I don't know if it's months later, a year later, he runs into the kid. And they sit down and they face each other at a diner. And the kid says, you ever think about the way you treated us? And he says, you don't understand what I was doing at Schaefer, which is the music school.
Yeah.
He said, I was trying to push you to be your best. And he says, well, what if you push someone so much or too far that they never become their best and they just quit? And the teacher says, you don't understand. The best would never quit or give up. And they would keep coming and coming and coming.
Right.
And he said, how do you know? He goes, I know.
Yeah. Oh,
so what are your thoughts? Because listen, I've been thinking about this for days now. When you told me something in the locker room once, you said, coaching's a boxing match.
I was just going to talk about that. Yeah. Joe Cullen and it's why we got along so well. Now he was, and I mean this now, let me get this out. Joe knew the game better than I did. Joe comes off as this rough, tough guy. Joe Cullen's a smart guy now. He's a smart guy. And so we got along because, as you know, and only the players and coaches and people surrounding Richmond football, we had very similar personalities. And that's why we kind of gravitated towards one another. And we would always talk about, Joe and I would always talk about in our car rides or when we were hanging around at the house, coaching is like the good ones to me. It's like a boxing match. You go in, boom, 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 boom. And you got them and then when you see they've had a little bit of it, they've had about enough. You know what I mean? Eric King's had about enough. Then you kind of back off. You know what I mean? But I guess, Mark, and I don't want to sound self-serving. It's just something that's in your DNA that you know how to drive guys. Now, I've driven a couple guys to where I remember Henry Girardin, a beautiful outside linebacker at UConn, about 6'4", 225, a handsome kid from Long Island. He about snapped on me on a hot morning practice. I had an offensive lineman at Richmond. I recruited him out of Altoona High School in Pennsylvania. It was one of those night practices. I think it might have been later on after you had graduated. And he about snapped on me. And I've had that happen to me a few times. And then you've just got to, like I tell my wife about parenting, I think it's very similar. You have to coach them hard. You got to love them hard. And you have to know how to do that. Not everybody knows how to do that. Some guys just know how to love them. And some guys know just how to hammer them when the kid gets completely turned off. I think you have to show them that you're human and that you've had, problems in your life and you have challenges in your life, but that you are, listen, if you see it, you just got to tell them, I got to do my job and I've got to do you a service. I can't let you not maximize your potential. And you just got to be, you got to be real with them. And I believe, like when I first went to Penn State, I was like, these cats are all the finest players in the country, the finest players in the country. So at first I was very cautious in how hard, but then you're around them. At least the offensive line, they want you to coach them hard. Olu Fasciano, the first round draft pick with the Jets 2 years ago, is like, coach me hard. Same with the guy. I mean, the real dudes want you to coach them.
Yeah. Yeah.
I hope I answered your question.
Oh, you answered it. You did a great job answering.
I believe in coaching hard, parenting hard. I believe in that.
Yeah.
But I also believe in loving them, high-fiving them, hugging them, kissing them. I believe in that too now. Yeah.
Yeah.
I believe in that.
I mean, I think that, I heard this multiple times when I was at Richmond. They don't care how much you know until they know how much you care.
Yeah.
But if you know a coach is got your back and like that means something, right? That really does mean something. Like, what I've learned is that, I mean, I had a run now of coaches who there wasn't that many that are boys, if you know what I mean. It was like my high school coach wasn't really like that.
Oh,
What Coach Reid, Coach Cullen. Then I had as a coordinator. I had Bill Parcells. My first training camp, I had Bill Parcells and Bill Belichick.
Yeah, yeah,
I'm like, those guys never said good job. I
yeah,
swear.
right.
And then New England, it was Belichick again. And then I had Dick LeBeau at the Bengals. Coach LeBeau was like 78 years old. He's like, get in there.
Yeah,
And then you come out, he'd say, all right. Like, he would never say good job, right?
yeah.
So, like, I think you do have to let them know if they do
Oh
something wrong.
yeah,
You
yeah.
know,
I
I
learned
think,
this. Yeah, I learned when I was at UConn. I learned this from a guy. There's the pro Greg Williams, and then there's the college Greg Williams. Coach Williams, who I worked for, Spags had left UConn. Coach Williams became the defensive coordinator. Played at NC State. Was a coach everywhere. Came to us from Maryland. Heavy set guy, tough, deep. From Danville, Pennsylvania. He was a badass, deep voice, badass. But at UConn, I would always think, and when we had a 7-on-7, because I coached the outside backers, I would stand next to him. He was a master at getting on guys, but when they did something right, good job. And I just thought that was the way to go.
yeah,
I believe when somebody does something good, you got to let them know. You're letting them know when they're doing something bad. Well, when they do something good, you got to let them know. You can't beat them down, and
yeah,
never get encouragement. And then there's no light at the end of the tunnel for
yeah,
these
right,
guys.
right,
Same
right.
with, it's the same thing Jim Reid did with me, or Steve Adagio did with me, or James Franklin did with me. I mean, hey, you know, oh, that was a great job with that dude. So
Mhm, mhm.
yeah, yeah, I
Awesome.
believe in that.
I love that. Coach, I know I've had you on for a long
Oh,
time.
I
I could
love
ask you
this.
so many questions. I get two more questions for
Yeah,
you. So,
sure.
Coach, who is the athlete in the NFL? It could be athlete, it could be an old lineman, because I know you did that hard for many years. Who, like, you were like, wow, this guy is
Steven
on
Jackson, the running
running
back
back,
coach.
the running
Yeah,
back.
yeah, yeah. He was a
Tell
badass.
us why. Tell us why. Tell us why.
Well, what he was, I don't. Of course, he was an athlete. He's one of, maybe if you look it up, maybe even one of the top 20 all-time leading rushers in the NFL. But Steven Jackson, like in the locker room, you know how you would be like wired up in the locker room. This is a running back, a big, beautiful running back that looked like Superman.
Yeah.
And in pregame, and I still stay in contact with him once or twice a year. And obviously, I didn't coach the running backs in St. Louis when I was with the Rams, but he was wired up now. I mean, you couldn't get near him. We had a fullback that we got from the Saints. I forgot his name. And he's the only one who could get around Jack. And then when we traded him or he got caught, I forgot. I remember Jack saying, Coach, I just want you around me in pregame. And I was the tight ends coach. And I said, I got you, Jack. But man, he could catch, he could run, he was violent.
Ooh.
Woof. He was
He wasn't a small running back either. 6'3", 240.
oh he was 6'2", 6'3". Yeah, he was probably 6'2", maybe 6'3", but he was a beautiful human being. And oh man, he was, Randy McMichael was a fine athlete,
Ooh. Wow.
tight end. Yeah, he was a hell. Georgia, played at Georgia. But Jack was, man, he was, whew,
No
in
joke.
New England, I was in a different role in New England, but, there's, Jesus, they had some, there's some beautiful dudes now. I mean, they had some beautiful dudes.
All right. What made New England New England? When you were
Oh, I
there,
could tell you that.
you were there in like the
Yeah,
big
yeah,
year.
4, 5, and 6. I could tell you that. People
You
ask
have
me
ring.
my
You have
opinion.
ring. You have a
Doesn't mean
ring.
I'm an expert, but here's my opinion. So my job, as I told you earlier in this program, my job was to travel the country and look at all the top college offensive linemen. So subsequently, I would be around a lot of different scouts, college directors, sometimes GMs from different organizations. And then I would be involved in the Senior Bowl. And then I would work the combine. So I was exposed to many different conversations. And when you think like, and it is, you think the NFL, it's the most, the term everybody uses nowadays, it's the most buttoned up league in the world. Well, for the most part, it is. But I was shocked at some of the dysfunctionality, if that's a word, that I had heard from some of these other organizations. Both sides of the aisle, the scouts, the coaches, not being on the same page, not being connected. In New England, from the top, Coach Belichick, you might want to say Mr. Kraft, Scott Pioli, down to the guy who was emptying the waste paper baskets, everybody was on the same page. Everybody knew how things ran. Everybody understood the demeanor and the temperament and how it all worked. And everybody fell into line. In my humble opinion, along with great players they had, obviously they had great players, but they picked those great players. And they picked smart, tough guys. That's in my opinion, guesstimation, observation. That's why they were as successful for the long run that they were, from the top down to the very, very bottom. That's what I saw it firsthand. I would be listening to other organizations and I'm like, now Pittsburgh was another very good organization. They were, and I'm sure there's a handful now. But I mean, these coaches, it's like a revolving door now. So, I mean, come on, what are we doing? You know what I mean? So,
Yeah.
But
I appreciate that.
But that's what I saw. That's my opinion, my evaluation. Yeah.
All right. That's very helpful. Thank you. So last question, Coach.
Oh, I love it.
I'll let you go. Coach, so there's a young person who wants to do something that's going to be very hard, and you're going to give them advice, and you call it mentor, guiding, but you want to give them advice on the road ahead, which is going to be very challenging. But how do you arm someone with enough perspective that they say, you know what, I'm going to stick it out and do my best?
Well, first, I think they have to have some, number one, they have to have the love of the game. The love of the game because of the game. I'm not saying they do or don't. Some of these young people, I don't know what their end game is. There's a lot of money in football now. So I think it's some of the people that have come into the profession, that's their end game. I'm not sure in most cases they last very long. They have to have a love of the game because despite all its challenges in this day and age, when that ball's kicked off, it's still the most beautiful game ever. I hate when people say invented, developed. And so when I speak to young people, I tell them, just put your nose to the grind. It's as simple as that, but put your nose to the grindstone to the best of your ability, keep your mouth shut, and great to be great on the computer. But a lot of us in the old days, I can't believe I'm saying it, a lot of us that started 45, 40, 50, we were just guys from Southern, Central, Springfield. We were just PE guys, but we were taught how to teach. Not all of us, but a lot of us. And we had great mentors, the George DeLeons, the Paul Pascalonis, the Jim Reids, blah, blah, blah. We were taught, Mike DeLongs, guys like that. We were taught how to teach so we could teach. And so what I say to these young people is great to be an expert at the computer because that's a big part of football, major college football, any football. I see these guys even at Nichols. They're banging away on the computers. But you've got to be able to coach. Somebody's got to teach Mark Megna how to bend the edge, Eric King how to angle drive. So you better find someone that can train you to be a coach. Because in the long run, if you want to coach, you want to be a computer guy and, that's great. There's nothing wrong with that. But if you want to coach and have longevity, we talked about it in the very beginning, Mark. I was telling my wife about a week ago, people are so respectful, and I just laugh because I'm just a guy. But people call me this, they call me that. And I'm like, come on, man. It's just because I lasted and you see the gray hair. It's because of that. But you talked about it in the very beginning of this program. For some reason, because I was around the people I was, because I was, I think, a phys ed major, I was taught how to teach. Some of it I digested. I could develop people. Owners, GMs, because now colleges have GMs, head coaches, coordinators. They want guys that can get their players to do what they're supposed to do. That's how you'll last. And listen, I told these young people, my first FBS job, I was 47 years old. That was only 20 years ago.
Yeah.
So I don't know if I answered your question, but
you did.
That's the story behind the story.
You did.
In the words of Jim Reid.
Yeah. You're incredible, Coach, and I just want to thank you for your time.
My pleasure.
I know everyone's going to love listening to this.
Oh, God, my pleasure.
I mean, I could ask you thousands of questions.
Well, we'll do it again someday. It was fun. I told my daughter, this is going to be fun.
Yeah. Well, shout out to your daughters, and that's another one. I'm going to get them on and ask them, does Coach come out too much? Because I know it does. I know it does. You coach them.
Sometimes my wife's like, Frank, one's 20, one's 18 now. But the older one, I can mother F. She can handle it. The younger one, nah, not a chance.
Oh, that's good.
Nah, she can't. I knew right away when she was little. I'm like, okay, I got a box with this one a little different.
Coach,
all right, my friend, I love you.
I love you too. You're the man. Give my best to the family, and I'll shoot this over to you. But thank you so much for doing this, Coach.
My
You're the
pleasure.
best.
My absolute pleasure. God bless.
God bless, Coach. You're the man.
See you, brother.